Hi, welcome to In Search of Insight to Nootropics Depot's monthly podcast. I'm your podcast host, Erica, and I'm very excited to introduce some special guests that are joining us for the podcast today, beginning with our very special guest who is an IFBB pro bodybuilder. He holds the world record for the sumo deadlift. He also has 2 million subscribers on YouTube, and his name is Greg Doucette. Welcome, Greg.
Welcome to me. And I'm also sound like the parrot from Aladdin.
I've heard that one a few
I've
times.
heard that 1,000 times. It's actually true.
This is awesome. We're so excited to have Greg on the podcast. This is a really big deal for us. We're excited to talk to him about bodybuilding and fitness and health, but we're also really excited to talk with him about a turning point for Nootropics Depot and also, I think, for Greg's company, um, based on turkesterone and really everything that happened around this sort of scandal around turkesterone and how Greg decided to take his quality of the supplements that he sells even further by really deep diving into quality and purity and the identity of the products that he is selling to his followers, his customers. And this is something that Nootropics Depot is really passionate about. So thanks, Greg, for being on the podcast and thanks for joining us. And we also have some more special guests. Marwin is also joining us.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be on here, and it's a pleasure to finally virtually meet.
Awesome.
And Marwin is doing a lot of the behind the scenes activity at HTLT, doing a lot of the sourcing, and he's
Yeah,
very knowledgeable, and we've had some fantastic conversations. And then, of course, we have
yes,
Ellie joining us as well.
Yes. So you all met Ellie in our last podcast. Ellie is our new science director at Nootropics Depot. We're really excited to have her on the team, and we're really excited to have her expertise and passion for plant biology to really help us take Nootropics Depot to the next level. So today we are going to chat with Greg, with Marwin, with Ellie, and with Emil, our product specialist at Nootropics Depot, about turkesterone, about why high quality supplements are so important and also about just what it's like to be in the health and the fitness industry and the supplement industry and all the things that we might have in common and we might relate to when it comes to keeping ourselves healthy, reaching our goals, and always pushing to really produce higher quality products, higher quality, fun content for you. And yeah, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think for a lot of our longtime listeners and customers of Nootropics Depot, you're probably a little bit surprised at this collaboration. We haven't done a collaboration with any other supplement brands yet. It's mostly been with other influencers in the supplement industry, like Joe Cohen, or who, by the way, I guess also sells products. So we have collaborated with one brand before. But this collaboration came about in a very unique way. I can say quite confidently. So, to backtrack a little bit for those who aren't familiar with what went on, 2 or 3 years ago, Turkesterone really started taking off, and we got interested in it as well because we thought, okay, everyone is carrying a Turkesterone product, the research is there, it looks very interesting. Let's go out and source ourselves a Turkesterone extract, which ended up being really hard. We looked all over the market, we communicated with people in China about Ajuga turkestanica products. They just didn't exist there, but they said, we can sell you something, but it just won't have turkesterone in it. Even our suppliers were very transparent about the fact that they couldn't source real Ajuga turkestanica and they couldn't source Ajuga turkestanica with a turkesterone content in it. And this confused us because there were at least 10 different products on the market that were claiming very high levels of turkesterone, like 500 milligrams of turkesterone. So we thought, either we really suck at sourcing or there's something more nefarious going on. So we went and tested all of these competitors, and what we found was pretty shocking that almost none of them contained turkesterone. And HTLT unfortunately got wrapped up in this as well because we tested one of your products and we didn't find the turkesterone that was claimed on it. So I can imagine this was an unpleasant thing to wake up for you guys. It was something that really shocked us too because for a long time we didn't have a huge social media presence, and all of a sudden we woke up one morning and every big bodybuilding YouTube channel had made a video about what was going on. We were getting threatened with lawsuits. It was a very tumultuous couple of weeks for us. And in all of this, what we really wanted to do was show to everyone the Turkesterone issue is present. Everyone is selling something that isn't Turkesterone, and something needs to be done about it. And we reached out to a lot of the big players to have a conversation. Derek from More Plates, More Dates was one of the first people we reached out to. Paul, our owner and CEO, he even invited Derek to come to our lab and to see how testing works and to go over all of it, to maybe even make some videos. We were very much on the helping end too. We are helping consumers by showing, hey, there's maybe not Turkesterone in the product that you're buying. And secondly, we actually wanted to help some of the companies behind it improve. And this is why you guys are on the podcast, because in the last 2 to 3 years, a lot has changed. And you came out with a product that actually has Turkesterone in it. And all of your competitors haven't followed suit. And we'll get into all of the juicy details later. But I guess let's start with that. How did it feel for you guys to wake up one morning and have this whole news story come out and it gaining traction, and maybe some of your old friends even making videos about your products and all of this? How did that feel? And how did you even get in that situation to begin with?
Well, I can say it was the most difficult thing that the company has to go through by far, because we were just as shocked as everyone, because there were third-party testing saying this is Turkesterone. And we're thinking, well, how is this possible? Apparently, the FDA accredited labs were not sensitive enough to do the proper testing, and that you required a mass spectrometer to do so. And so there was nothing we could do. Essentially, we thought we were selling the honest product. Now, behind the scenes, I'm talking to Derek, and Derek's saying, do not release this information. Don't do a video on it. Don't say anything. I'm like, Derek, there's no way I'm doing this. And so we produced a video the next day. And shockingly, Derek produces one about 2 hours before, knowing that I'm going to come and say, hey, guys, it's not real. And so everyone thought that Derek did the right thing and that I was a snake oil salesman. I've to this day, there isn't a day goes by, you're selling snake oil, your Turkesterone isn't real. I'm like, we have third-party testing. We've done the proper methods. We've done everything to ensure its quality. But yet people continue to blame me more than anyone. I don't ever hear Chris Bumstead's name dragged in the mud. I rarely even hear Derek. It's always been Greg Doucette, the snake oil salesman. And so finally, I feel vindicated, because we've gone through all the process to actually get Turkesterone sourced properly, proven it. But yet even today, we still get labeled as just selling snake oil.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, and hopefully this podcast can and help with that, because we have the testing data and we can show it, and we can show it in relation to your competitors. Actually, now that we're on a roll, Ellie, do you want to start pulling up some of this data?
Yeah.
I think it's important to, like you said, Emil, it's unfortunate that this really tarnished your name, Greg, but it's more than unfortunate. I think it shows just how important it is as a business owner and as a person who people really look to and trust, that they can really trust your products, that they can trust what you say. And the fact that you're willing to make this podcast and you're willing to be honest about your practices and about your product, I think that speaks to your character. And I think that's really inspiring, because you're always going to have haters, right? Like the bigger you get, the more people feel intimidated or, want a piece of what you have. But you going through the steps to actually verify that what you're selling is the real thing, I think that means a lot to the people who trust you and support you. And of course, it's going to mean more effective and actually, you know, safe and real products too.
And I think one really important thing to hit on as well that you said, Greg, you guys thought you were doing the right thing. You did the third-party testing, and it turns out not every third-party testing lab does their due diligence, because there are also a lot of dry labs. If you go to them and you say, hey, I'm expecting 5% Turkesterone in this extract, they will just sit on it for a little while. They won't even do any of the testing, and they'll print you out a COA that says, hey, it contains 5% Turkesterone. And we've actually done this a few times. We have gone out and deliberately sent fake products to a lab and told them, this is a lion's mane extract, and we're expecting to see 5 milligrams per gram of adenosine A. And what do they come back with? Yeah, it contains 5 milligrams per gram of adenosine A. Here's a beautiful COA. And we know that it's bullshit because we sent them basically sawdust. It wasn't even mushroom material. And somehow they told us, one, it is lion's mane, and two, it contains adenosine A. So, and this is also something we were thinking about, that perhaps there are individuals who are just getting duped by the system. And we want to help those people who are getting duped. And this is why we put out also an open invitation to a lot of people, including Derek, including you. Hey, look, we will help you. This is a very difficult industry to navigate with all of the analytical testing, and you need partners and help in that. And we can be that help. And basically, no one took our help, which I think kind of shows the character of a lot of these companies too, that even when they've gotten called out, they continue selling the exact same product. And I think that's really the most shocking thing to me, when you call someone out and they just don't do anything about it, and they very cockily keep selling their product that's completely fake, and they make a lot of money on it. And meanwhile, people are putting things in their body that God knows what it is. And that's kind of scary to me. And hopefully this podcast will shed some light on what's going on in the supplement market, and that not everyone is bad. And that's something we've always wanted to highlight, that we need some positivity as well.
Okay, Ellie, so let's take a look at these results, and can you explain and kind of walk us through what we're looking at also?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with just kind of an overview of how we do identity testing. So the way we do identity testing for botanicals is primarily starting with something called HPTLC, or high performance thin layer chromatography. And the way HPTLC works in its most simple form is you start by putting your botanical extract on a plate. You put that plate in a solvent, and then the solvent kind of moves up the plate. And as it moves up the plate, it separates out the compounds. So botanical extracts have a lot of compounds in them. Those compounds have different structures. They have different kind of characteristics that causes them to move at different rates up the plate. And since each botanical is unique, it has a unique banding pattern. So, for example, if we have a botanical reference material, this can be a material that we have verified, we know for sure it is the botanical we're interested in. It'll have a unique banding pattern.
And
then we
Ellie,
can have
real
different
quick,
kinds of results.
can I jump in for just 1 second?
Yeah.
So with the botanical reference material, for a material like Ajuga turkistanica, it's very hard to get your hands on a botanical reference material to actually do the testing. And I just want to thank Greg and Marwan for organizing that. A sample was sent to us all the way from Uzbekistan to our facility. And now we have a botanical reference material for Ajuga turkistanica. And without them, this wouldn't have been possible.
So there are some things that went into our extract in verifying its origin. So the first thing we did was we sent it to a lab in France that works with ecdysteroids. They've been working with these materials since the 1990s. Unfortunately, they asked us to not disclose their names because it would be a conflict of interest. So just an academic thing. And the second verification test we did was we sent it to Alchemist Labs when they had reference material for Ajuga turkistanica, which I believe they sourced from Chromadex. And then that was like the second verification for the roots. And the third one was the Institute of Plant Chemistry in Uzbekistan. They provide certificates for each extract to verify its origin. So there are a lot of quality control steps. And we also have a lot of trust in our suppliers, and they're actually our partners now.
Great.
Cool.
And yeah, this now you can really see it in real time, how a lot of that work is packing out, and this botanical reference material being put to work. Anyway, sorry, Ellie, continue.
Yeah, that's one of the most important parts of HPTLC and botanical testing in general, is making sure you really truly trust the material that you're comparing to. So based on that botanical reference material, we can have a few different results. we can see that a material has characteristics of the botanical reference material. So in this example, the sample is missing a band. We can see that it matches the botanical reference material. So the banding pattern is exactly the same. That's the ideal result. Or we can see that it doesn't match the BRM. So in this case, we only have one band, but this could be, it's a completely other plant with a completely other banding pattern altogether. So that's kind of the general gist of how we read HPTLC plates. So now I can show the actual products on a real plate. So it looks a little different than the little cartoon figure. But what we have here is we have two analytical standards. So these are the compounds that are most common in terkestrone products. We have beta-ecdysterone and terkestrone, and they each have their own unique band on the plate. We then have the new reference material for the Ajuga turkestanica, and we can see that it has its own unique banding patterns as well. And then we have the Turk Max and the Turk Builder. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just kind of an updated formulation of the same product. And we can see that these banding patterns in these products match the Ajuga turkestanica botanical reference material. We have this clear band here, we have this band here, and we have this band here. And these extra bands that are in here are because there's other materials in this product as well. But this is a clear showing that the Turk Max has Ajuga turkestanica in it. And this is the data showing that it matches.
Great.
Then it gets interesting when we look at the competitor samples. So these are commercially available products. And this is compared to the Turk Builder that we've already talked about. It matches. We believe it really is Ajuga turkestanica. But then we also have Cyanoides archeonida. And this is another plant that is often used in place of Ajuga turkestanica, but it doesn't have terkestrone in it. So when we look at all of these commercially available products that are labeled as Ajuga turkestanica, they don't match the BRM for Ajuga turkestanica, and in most cases, they're actually likely this plant instead. And what's really interesting about this data is the terkestrone band that is clearly terkestrone. We see it in the Turk Builder. We don't see it in any of these products. So we have other analytical data as well to look at the actual quantification of terkestrone. In some cases, there is minor amounts in these products, but not enough of an amount to be read by the HPTLC plate.
Is it safe to assume that these other companies have a plant that's a copycat plant of Ajuga? It's not the same plant and it has some kind of similarities, but not enough to call it what it is.
Right. It's hard to make an exact definitive answer on what plant are in these, but we do see that in most cases, it matches the Cyanoides botanical reference material. So we have clear bandings that match here, as well as the rest of these bands are present. So our best guess, so our best guess is that this is what is in here, but it's hard to make it a definitive exact call.
So I think when you pull the evidence, Cyanoides arachnoidea is endemic to China, where it grows in vast amounts. And prior to the word terkestrone becoming popular, this was the primary ecdysteroid source being sold at the time. I think if you pull the evidence with what you've presented us, it totally makes sense to say.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, in sourcing products, we've been asked, like, why don't you buy this? Why don't you buy that? So much cheaper than what we're buying, but it's not actually the terkestrone or even the plant that we're trying to get. And so other companies, they're making even more profits than last time, buying in the fake plant, pretending it's that real plant, and just selling it at perhaps cheaper prices than us, and people getting scammed without even realizing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to kind of expand a little bit on what you were asking earlier, if there were any copycat plants, that's definitely happening. And we haven't looked at any of the other Ajuga species. So I know this is something Marwan and I have talked about a little bit as well, because there's also Ajuga ciliata, which we did actually find one product, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which seems to be Ajuga ciliata, but we don't have botanical reference materials for that. So that's one of the
Yeah.
limitations, of course, for this, is that you do need to compare it to something. So we can't look at one of these plates and just from looking at it go, it's this plant. We actually have to get a botanical reference material, scan that one in, and then compare it to that. So the only thing we can compare it to here is either Ajuga turkestanica or C. arachnoides. And what you'll see a little bit later is that even though on these plates we're not necessarily seeing turkesterone, the C. arachnoides also can contain turkesterone. In fact, our beta-ectosterone product actually has 6 milligrams of turkesterone in it, but I've taken both our beta-ectosterone product and your Turk Builder, the original one, and they don't feel anything alike. And I think that's a really interesting conversation we can have a little bit later on, that turkesterone is definitely active. There's interesting research on it, beta-ectosterone too. But from what I'm personally feeling and from what you have told me about how some of your customers have been feeling on it, I don't necessarily think it's turkesterone that's responsible for it. And there are other bioactive compounds in Ajuga turkestanica. So Marwan and I talked about siasterone was one of the other ectosteroids, right?
Yeah, siasterone and jugalactone, as well as other non-steroidal saponins. Like, for example, you have a class of compound called iridoids. They actually make up a larger percentage of the bioactives than the turkesterone content, which unfortunately we can't test for it because we don't have the reference materials. But there's so much in the plant.
I have a question for Greg. I'm really curious. Greg, how did you discover turkesterone products in the first place? What was your introduction to this type of product?
Honestly, I remember way back before Marwan was working for me, maybe like 4 years ago, he was sending me all these emails and articles on turkesterone. And I don't know if Marwan thought that I was some kind of super genius, but I was like, I can't even understand what I'm reading. I'm like, who is this kid that I see at the gym that has this crazy physique? Like, he's ripped, he's bike riding like 1 or 2 hours a day, lifted weights, and that knows so much stuff. And so eventually we basically hired this guy because he's like a super genius. He knows everything. And I'm like, just do the research. I don't understand it. So all these questions, I think Marwan could answer so much better than me because he's like, I don't know how he does it.
Okay, this is really cool. I love to hear this story, the background story. Also, that you guys were going to the same gym. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I saw him in the gym and I asked him, I was like, hey, did you hear about turkesterone? And he was like, what? He didn't know how to say it. He was like, turkestalone. Like, why don't you try it? The evidence sounds pretty promising. At the time, I thought turkesterone was legit. I didn't know about the whole intricacies of the sourcing and whatnot. So I took an interest in it just because I have a passion for like botanical compounds and like natural anabolic agents. I contacted a university professor that chooses to be unnamed and was just exchanging emails asking him questions about its sourcing. And
There we go. Yeah.
yes. Okay, so I saw Coach Greg in the gym lifting hard as usual. I went up to him and asked him if he's ever tried turkesterone. And at the time, he called it turkestalone because he's pretty bad at pronouncing names. And he didn't dismiss it. Like he never said like, oh yeah, that's like snake oil. He never said that. He was open-minded. He was like, you know what? I'll try it out. And he actually tried what he thought was turkesterone was actually ectosterone, and he got some performance enhancement from it. And it made me very interested in exploring it further because I believed in it too. I believe in Coach Greg's anecdotes a lot because I was a fan at the time. I emailed a bunch of researchers that were working on clinical trials for just ectosterone, and it seemed very promising, much more promising than the past like anabolic agents like Tribulus and Laxagenin and all that stuff. Like that, those are already on my poop list. Ectosterone was a new thing I wanted to learn about. So eventually, Coach Greg started selling Turk Builder, and everything was like dry labs, as you mentioned. And I started working for him after it was being sold, and I stuck around to find out that the quality control wasn't where it should have been, and we were selling ectosterone. So I got on it, contacted many different people in Uzbekistan to try and source different extracts, contacted dozens of Chinese suppliers to test their turkesterone. We tested out in our local lab here at Dalhousie. We got a grant from our university to run some preliminary tests, and we found out all the Chinese stuff was just uh, varied in ectosterone content. All of them had like zero turkesterone. They all looked different. They all um, it just seemed like a very unstandardized ingredient. So I got tired of testing the Chinese stuff. It was a waste of resources. I started testing the Uzbek stuff. Every time we test the Uzbek stuff, we get very high peaks for turkesterone. And eventually I started sending these samples out to a lab in France that I keep talking about, where they're more equipped to test for different ectosteroids, and they have the literature to verify the plant identity based on the spectrum of compounds that are present. So every time we sent them the Chinese stuff, they told us, hey, I mean, it has a lot of ectosteroids, but it's probably not Ajuga turkistanica because, X compounds are missing. It doesn't seem legit. And every time I send them the Uzbek materials, they would verify it. So I got the powder. I pulled up to Coach Greg's house. I'm like, here's some powder I want you to try. He took the powder raw. And he said it was the most disgusting thing he's ever
I can
tasted. But
imagine.
yeah, and he kept trying it on himself, and it was really like from a business standpoint, it did not make a lot of sense to re-release Turk Builder. Everyone hated the word turkesterone, but his experience is that I don't want to talk on your experience. Maybe you can say what happened, but it was remarkable. He has narcolepsy, and he noticed like he was able to get off his modafinil and not have those sleepy episodes, and it made a huge difference from that perspective. Pumps were better, aggression was better. Some of their manufacturers put it in with sodium caprate, which actually ended up being beneficial because we were able to use less plant material to get the same effect. And then we sent it out to many different volunteers, men, women, teenagers, like obviously consenting above 18 years and older. But we sent it to so many people, and they all had unique experiences. Some people had crazy, insane dreams that would make them want to sleep less because the dreams are pretty much like nightmares. Some people just couldn't sleep and would be up for days. I asked our supplier, I'm like, what's up? Why is this causing some weird borderline psychotic symptoms? He's like, firstly, because in Uzbekistan, we only take it in like 300 milligrams max. You guys are mega dosing this stuff. And
Is
the
that
other
300
thing,
milligrams of an extract or just of the raw plant?
exactly, the extract.
Okay.
And we were taking it 1.5 grams max.
Oh, wow.
He was like, you guys are insane.
Wow.
And the other thing was our supplier, which is now our partner. He says a lot of people in Uzbekistan use it to stay awake during night shifts. So it has a psychogenic effect. It's definitely psychoactive. It's not like cyanotis. It's not like traditional ectosterone. There's something in it that tricks the mind. There's something in it that allows you to feel like more aggression and train harder. We don't know what it is, but we know for a fact that we had something special on our hands, which is why we took the risk to re-release Turk Builder.
No, I can say
Sorry.
that I did not want to sell turkesterone again because everyone called me a snake oil salesman. I'm like, how am I going to get reputation back? I was absolutely scared. I just didn't want to do it. So, but I'm trying this product and I know for sure that it works. So on my heart of hearts, I know that it's working without question. Like I've used steroids in the past. I've used halotestin. I've used all kinds of different drugs. I'm very sensitive. I can experience things and I'm like, this stuff works. And so I knew I wasn't lying. I wasn't bullshitting anyone. And so I said, I'm going to sell this product knowing the entire fitness industry is going to call me out. They're going to all hate on me. I knew it. But I thought it was worth it because I said eventually they're going to look back on this and say Greg was right all along. So I released the product and I'm telling you, it's not without side effects. When I first used it, especially in the higher doses, I couldn't get to sleep. I was like, what's going on? I had increased aggression. And so a guy like Mike Isertel, no way should this guy be using it. So it doesn't come without negative side effects. Some people can't get quality sleep. it makes some people anxious. And so I would warn people, like, just don't take the whole bottle. Like, you can't just go crazy on it. But when I go in the gym, I literally was feeling like I was taking halotestin, which is something for marked aggression. I could just train harder. I felt more power. I could go harder on the bike. My cardio was improved. And I didn't need as much sleep. I said to some different guys, superb cycling guys that like are at the elite level, instead of needing 8 hours of sleep, they only needed 5. They're like, Greg, what is this stuff? I can ride harder. I don't need to sleep. What is this wonder drug? And they didn't know what it was. And I'm like, I don't even know how to explain the science of it. Everyone wants a mechanism of action. That's the buzzwords that people want. I can't give it. I don't know.
And I'll tell you, because I've been doing a lot of research into Ajuga turkistanica after taking Turk Builder and experiencing this kind of uplifting wakefulness promoting effect, which made no sense to me because the ectosteroids don't do that. So it's not the turkesterone. Maybe it's one of the iridoid glycosides that Marwan was mentioning earlier. But this is kind of the problem we run into a lot of the times. An extract can have an effect and you can't explain why that is scientifically. So, leading up to this podcast, I've been doing a bunch of research trying to figure out, is there maybe a compound that has a wakefulness promoting effect in Ajuga turkistanica that's been identified? And it just hasn't because that research hasn't been done. And we're kind of actively doing the research here by just taking it and feeling and reporting and saying, it keeps me up, I need less sleep. And I think that's really interesting. The
Yeah.
point of having turkesterone as a standardization is still important in my opinion because it shows you that it is Ajuga turkistanica, that you have it at a certain quality level, that your extract is consistent. And I was explaining this to Marwan recently as well, that we do this a lot too. Like with our mushroom products, we standardize it for beta glucans. Beta glucans are absolutely not what is interesting about the mushrooms, but we just can't test for any of the other compounds because there aren't reference materials available, or we just simply don't know what compounds are responsible for it. But you still need a quality marker. For us, that quality marker is beta glucans in the mushrooms. For you, it's turkesterone in the Ajuga turkistanica, but there's so much more going on about it.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
yeah, and I thought
Oh,
it was
sorry.
really interesting what you said, Marwan, that your supplier made an extract that was much higher in turkesterone and it lost the magical effects that you guys are getting, and that you only get it at the lower standardizations. And we've seen that with a lot of different extracts too, where if we extracted really high, like with horny goatweed, if we get all of the icarin out and just pure icarin, it's a very boring effect. It is good for blood flow, but it doesn't have any of the unique mood boosting properties that you get when you have lower standardizations of horny goatweed because there's just hundreds of different compounds. And within our world of testing, we really only have the capacity to look for a couple of different compounds. We can't test for 600 compounds at once. That would be way too expensive. And maybe Ellie can get into that a little bit more while she presents some of the next data as well.
Mm.
But yeah, very, very interesting that different extracts of the same plant feel differently. But here, turkesterone is definitely what we would maybe call a marker compound. It's always going to be there. It's only going to be there if it's Ajuga turkistanica at those levels. Because as you'll see in the next results, we have a beta ectosterone extract that's 50% beta ectosterone, which allows us to get 250 milligrams of beta ectosterone, but only 6 milligrams of turkesterone. For you guys, it's a much more even mix where you're getting more turkesterone than you're getting beta ectosterone, which in our experience only happens with the Ajuga turkistanica. So not only do we now have TLC data showing it's the actual species, you also have the data of the turkesterone. And I think that's really important. And now the question is what actually is giving you this unique effect?
Yeah. I'm just going to comment on this quickly. The ratio of turkesterone to ectosterone is certainly a marker you can use to screen if something is legitimately Ajuga turkistanica, but there is some limitations to that where, for example, when our extract is harvested right before it rains, the plant increases its turkesterone production, so then you get more turkesterone than 20E, but most of the time the 20E is like at a 1-to-1 ratio with the turkesterone. In fact, slightly higher. Sometimes it's 2-to-1, because then you have twice the amount of 20E as turkesterone.
Okay.
I did want to say something though. just because I think it's really interesting that um, so I'll just give you a little bit of personal background. I am not a bodybuilder or really a fitness uh, I'm gonna say I'm not a fitness freak. I love yoga, I love to hike, I love to bike, but you won't see me in the gym lifting weights, at least not yet. I do want to start because Emil has recently gone back to the gym after taking a little bit of time off of weightlifting. And it's really cool because last month in the podcast, we were talking with Ellie about her background and how she got into supplements. And I learned from Ellie that you were also really into weightlifting when you were in college too, right?
Yeah, I did competitive powerlifting for like 5 years. So not at an extreme level by any means. Like max was like collegiate nationals, but like that was how I got into supplements, was a adverse effect from a pre-workout that kind of changed how I view just taking random stuff that you buy at Walmart or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then to learn about how Greg and Marwan met each other just going to the same gym and, just this kind of world of weightlifting and the world of bodybuilding. It's a world that I'm really not familiar with. And being on the outside, to be honest, I was always a little bit skeptical because to me, I just saw really just the surface level, like buff people wearing workout clothes, going to the gym, and focused on getting strong, getting big. I had some friends in high school who, after graduating, like rather than pursuing different careers, like I had a couple friends who became bodybuilders, a couple girlfriends who became bodybuilders, and I really didn't understand the motivation necessarily at the time. But now on this podcast talking with you, I just find it so cool that you guys are not only concerned about fitness and about being strong and about, having a certain type of physique, but really, really interested in the science behind it too. And the fact that like your your interest in fitness and your interest in being strong, it's not just about the way that you look, it's really about the science and how like plants and supplements and food and nutrition, like this is all a part of the process that you have to learn about in order to really reach weightlifting goals and in order to reach like physique goals too. And I have much more appreciation for bodybuilding now um, than ever before because I realize it's not just like staring at yourself in the mirror and trying to get big. It's like it's so much
It's
more than
not just
that.
meatheads.
No, no, like you guys are all like super educated, really smart, like really committed and passionate, and I think it's really great to be able to have this conversation because yeah, it's not meatheads. Like I think sometimes for people on the outside, they don't understand just how much work and thought and research and education actually goes into this stuff.
It's funny.
I do think it's
Oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, I think it's important to point out that there are also kind of the worst way to put it, but like just meatheads as well that kind of just take random products because they think it's going to kind of skip all the hard work that goes into it. And that's why it's important that we have people like us that help ensure the quality of those products so that people shouldn't have to think so deeply about it. So it's good that people are helping make sure there's quality products.
Yeah.
I think what
Right.
we all have in common is we're all trying to be our best selves. And it's not just weightlifting or yoga. I mean, I did 13 years of triathlons. I also go to yoga and I'm racing bikes now. I only lift weights 2, maybe 3 times a week, but
Oh,
I'm on
wow.
the bike 6 or 7 days a week. But Turkesterone, all these other supplements, they can make people better. And that's what everyone wants.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I think the origin story maybe for a lot of us is we got interested in it because of fitness. We started trying to push ourselves a little bit further and getting sore or maybe thinking, is there a little bit of a performance gain to be had? And then you have a pre-workout with some caffeine in it and it does the trick. And then you kind of want a bit more and you start doing the research and also researching why is caffeine performance enhancing for me? And that's also how I got into this. I was really skinny when I got to college, and I was going to college in Canada actually, and at this university in Calgary, every guy at the gym was massive. So I started talking to some of them, and oh yeah, I'm taking creatine, I'm taking this pre-workout, and then I got interested in that. And that's actually what led me to this company, because at a certain point I thought, okay, I can enhance my performance in the gym. Maybe I can also enhance my performance in the classroom. So I got really into nootropics, and it did really help. It helped in the gym. It helped with my stress levels. It helped with my cognitive function, and that's kind of how I ended up here too. And now going back, and it's all full circle because we're working on a lot of bodybuilding focused supplements now, because honestly, that's what sells the best in this industry, I think. The people most serious about supplementation, about enhancing certain aspects of their life, most often are very interested in fitness too. They go hand in hand. Almost everyone I talk to who is on a good supplement regime is also exercising a lot. And it's usually in support of the exercise, and then they start getting into other things. So it's a good
Yeah.
gateway.
Like we can take the things that we appreciate about ourselves. Like we can take our intelligence, we can take our strength, our full selves, and we can improve it by using supplements, and that can help us just make connections in the world.
But those supplements have to be real. So if you're taking a product like something that should contain turkesterone, and turkesterone should make you stronger, and you're in the gym and you just aren't seeing the results, and maybe you start blaming yourself, maybe you're not doing it right, maybe you're not eating it right, why isn't the turkesterone having the effect that it's claimed to be having? Well, it's not having the effect because you're literally not taking turkesterone. You're being lied to, and you're wasting your money. And I think that's a real shame too, because these things can really help you, but not if they're not what they claim to be, or if they're coming below label claim and you're not able to replicate the dosages that you see in studies. Uh, Marwan and I actually had an interesting discussion about this too. Even in research studies, they oftentimes will just go and grab a random product off the shelves, they'll test it, and they go, look, this product did absolutely nothing. But what they failed to do was to actually test the product. So even the researchers looking into all of this are naive enough to just assume everything is real on the market. And
They're not naive. It's on purpose. I
oh,
reach
really?
out to each one of them individually, show them the evidence. I'm like, so at least, would you be willing to at least put in your limitations that you didn't test a product, or perhaps, it might not be testosterone, after proving to them their product doesn't have what the conclusion states. Like,
Wow.
if your conclusion of the study rests on the fact that you administered 500 milligrams of turkesterone and you saw no results, but if you come to find that you were administering 0 milligrams of turkesterone versus placebo, you would at least feel compelled to, um, I guess, provide an update to the journal. And we've come to learn the hard way that a lot of people just want to make publications. They want to have their name, like, I guess, like, known in the literature, and they do not care about disseminating proper information. I don't think we're ever going to see a proper Ajuga turkistanica study because it's very hard to source. So for the time being, we know it's safe. We tried it. We have Uzbek trials, which aren't published in Western journals, showing therapeutic effects. Say, no end organ damage in like terms of liver function and whatnot. So we're confident it's safe. And for the moment being, if you're on edge about the science and you're waiting for it, I don't think it's going to come out in the next couple of years.
And so imagine my frustration having a company and selling turkesterone, knowing that it works, having the proper plant, and then people using studies to disprove that it works that don't even contain the plant nor the product. And then people quoting these studies and saying, see, here's proof that Greg is a snake oil salesman, when they didn't even use my product to do that study. And then when you prove with receipts that it's fake, they don't acknowledge it. There's so many people that do this. And so the science nerds of the world, I don't want to pick on them, but if you're doing this and you know that the study isn't a real study, that they're being dishonest, and you talk about that, then shame on you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think as an extension of that, some of your competitors who are selling fake turkesterone, let's say someone takes Derek's product and they go, nah, this didn't do anything, turkesterone is bullshit. That also now gives everyone in the market who's selling real turkesterone a really bad name. And we see that sometimes with ourselves too. And the fact is that if you take real turkesterone, it clearly has a very positive effect. But yeah, you won't get it from a product like Derek's, which doesn't really contain terkestrone, which maybe Ellie, this is a great time to pull that up so we can actually
Yeah.
see what's going on, because it is kind of shocking to see a product that should contain quite a lot of terkestrone really not containing any. So yeah, here we go.
Right. So there's a lot of data on here. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. So we tested 10 products against our analytical standards. So we were able to quantify the amount of terkestrone and beta-ecdysterone in each of these products. But before we get into the actual numbers, I want to zoom in on one part, or two parts. So most of these products claim that they contain Ajuga turkestanica. One of them does contain, it's a different Ajuga species. So we have to be careful when we're making the claims of, if it does or does not meet label claims, because they're not all claiming the exact same thing. So that's where we go back to that botanical reference material discussion, where we can only claim it doesn't match what botanical reference material we have. So just remember that when you're looking at this data. But the other thing to point out is all of these products are, well, a lot of these products are claiming to be standardized to different things. In most cases, it's total terkestrone. We do also see some that say terkesterones, which is not a thing. Terkestrone is a single compound. It's not a class of compounds. So that doesn't really make any sense to us. But then we see some that are kind of standardized to beta-ecdysterone or ecdysteroids. So those are not claiming to be standardized to terkestrone. Instead, they're being standardized to something else. So it's important to understand what the label claims are before we dive into the data. And everything we're going to be looking at is in claimed content per milligram in each capsule.
A nice surprise in here for you guys, because you're way above label claim.
So we see with the Turk Max and the Turk Builder, they are both well over the label claims for terkestrone. 14 milligrams and 16 milligrams in each of the products respectively, over the 10 milligrams per capsule claim. And I think it's important to note, like, the 10 milligrams per capsule was probably not a random decision. It was probably science-based dosage claims. So a lot of these products are saying 50, 60 milligrams per capsule. If that even necessary, probably not.
No, that's ridiculous. Like, to think that you would need that much, I would argue that it might be even dangerous at that amount. It's just way too much. And people just put that on because that's what they want. They want to make people think that's how much you need. It's the cool selling amount. We're putting on actual amounts that matter to people.
We're using terkestrone as a quality control standard. So we know that whatever is in the plant, if we always meet the same percent terkestrone, we can assume that all the other compounds in the plant are at the same level. So we're not really so concerned about the terkestrone content. We just want to make sure it's the same every time.
Yeah, which is great because you set a claimed content and you're meeting it and exceeding it even. And that's what we do as well. Just because it says 10 milligrams, that's a minimum content. If it's a little bit over, that's a bonus for everyone. And here you see, you get quite a bit of an extra bonus. And what you see with these other ones, maybe Greg, what you said, maybe it is unsafe at these levels. So thank God that they're not meeting the label claim. But it is kind of shocking when, for example, let's pick one out. Unfortunately, Gorilla Mind doesn't have a terkestrone claim anymore, even though the product is still called Turkplex. But if we look, for example, at
Psychopharma, for example.
Psychopharma, that's one that's testing really low, not as low as the lowest. So this is always our favorite, Tonique. Basically everything we test from Tonique fails, and this one is no exception because we're seeing a 60 milligram terkestrone claim, very high, and they're getting 0.45 milligrams. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's
They're at
really,
0.075% of their label claim.
So I don't know even what this is because, well, you do see quite a bit of beta-ectosteroid. But this is also interesting to compare it with our product. Our product is standardized to beta-ectosteroid, and we have 250 milligrams. So a lot of these other products, it must just be a sprinkling of something mixed with a bunch of filler. I'm not really sure what they're doing, actually. At 450 micrograms, it's not going to do anything.
This data shows, it kind of confirms what we saw with the HPTLC, where there was no terkesterone banned in most of the products, other than the Turk Max and the Turk Builder. Even though there is, 1.3 milligrams per cap, that's not at a level that's high enough to be detected by another analytical method. So these products just have the absolute bare minimum, or less than the bare minimum, in my opinion. And then even the lack of the beta-ectosterone, even though there are some in there, it's at such a low level, we don't even know what plant are in these products at this point, because it's not matching either of the major compounds that you can detect.
I mean, so when you look at this, you see Nootropics Depot, 100% of label claim, and you see the Turk Max Turk Builder over 100%. And then the next best that you can get is Gorilla Mind at 18%. And so you literally have to take 5 times the dose of Gorilla Mind to almost get what it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this should be 5 times off. Buy 5, get 1 free. That would be fair, or something like that. Buy 1 and we'll give you 5 free. That would be a good sale on Gorilla Mind. I think that's what they should do right now.
I mean, I think it's crazy that you literally are just throwing your money away, thinking that you're improving your performance, thinking that you're doing something good for yourself, and perhaps what's actually in the product isn't super dangerous, but if it's not meeting the label claims, how do you really know?
I will say, like most of these have some amount of ectosterone, and the studied dosages of ectosterone ranges from 10 milligrams all the way to 300 milligrams. And the concern of the ingredient sourcing that I have is that in China, when they're finding out different raw ingredients to bring to the Western market, sometimes they'll bring something that has an extensive history of human use, like cyanotis has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for respiratory illnesses. It has a good safety profile. But then this Ajuga ciliata stuff is actually a garden weed that people never consume. And like they're putting it in there because it has the word Ajuga in it. So then maybe it's like, okay, we could sell it as some kind of an Ajuga, but we can spike it with like cyanotis, ectosteroids. And like they're just mishmashing a bunch of different stuff together, stuff that humans have consumed and stuff that humans have never ever taken, and selling it to us in America and Europe and everywhere in the world.
So the
So
cyanotis, perhaps do you know the name that they give it for Chinese medicine?
金骨枣,
Okay.
you can ask Vince.
Yeah, and how is it administered? Is it like in a tea, or how do they?
Tea. The
Okay.
root is actually very high in ectosteroids. The root has 2% ectosterone by weight.
What do they
And
actually use it for in traditional Chinese medicine?
respiratory illnesses, recovery from like viral stuff, but never sports performance. Where Juga turkistanica has an extensive history of use by athletes, specifically to enhance like strength and body composition. And so it's interesting to see what the historical use was for
For
both.
sure.
It
Out of
reminds me of the amino spiking that happened years ago with protein powders. It's almost like Turk spiking's going on. It's like these companies seem to be, it's almost like they're saying, hey, like the analogy, hey, we're going to sell you whey protein, but in reality, they sell you pea protein and they spike aminos in it to make it look like it's better than it is.
Absolutely.
I see you shaking. I see you nodding, Ellie.
I think, yeah, that's something we've seen a lot, and it's kind of highlights the importance of really robust quality testing and doing more than one kind of method and validating with external labs too. Because if you're just testing for the one compound that's known to be in a plant, it can be a lot cheaper for a supplier to just spike that compound and use a plant that has nothing in it, and then you're just consumers are wasting their money. And that's ultimately, we want to protect consumers, but we also want to make sure that people are taking what they want to be taking. And just, suppliers are smart and they're business minded. And so they can get around these kind of testing options by spiking. And that's a really big issue.
So would you say it's safe to assume that it's not like the people that own the company? Like, so example, we've mentioned Derek a lot, that it's probably not Derek, but the supplier that's selling his stuff to Derek, that's lying to him, that's spiking their products, and that Derek just doesn't know any better.
3 years ago, I would have said yes. But then we told Derek, this is how it works. Your product is fake. You need to do something about it. So I would say that excuse has been taken away from Derek at this point.
Because I'm just saying, like, I certainly did not orchestrate or plan out to try and mislabel anything. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do. I don't have a business degree. I'm not some genius. I just went to school and studied kinesiology, and I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, do the third-party testing, ensure that it's good quality. Okay, I did that, and I sell the product. But then come and find out, wait, there's this that they can do. And I'm like, okay. And then we went above and beyond every standard possible to ensure that the people that buying from us were getting the products that they wanted to. But it seems the other companies aren't doing the same thing.
No, not at all, because a lot of the data we're looking at right now is the same data we were seeing 2, 3 years ago, and these companies haven't done anything about it except you. And I also thought we were thinking, should we include both Turk Builder and Turk Builder Max, because now you only have Turk Builder Max. But I thought it was good to include because you not only did it once correctly, you did it twice correctly. And that's the real test for me, because a lot of people will put out one really good batch and then they'll just go back to the one that makes more money, which is the one that you don't have to go through all of this hard work to find. But you guys didn't do that. You had one product that failed, you learned your lesson, and then you did it correctly, and you did it correctly twice now. At least once. I think you've probably had other batches even between these.
I could say it's very difficult to keep it in stock because they can only make so much so quickly. We had to put a lot of money into helping the Uzbekistan to get the products manufactured quick enough. But trust me, there are deals to be made. We could be getting bottles at just under $6 a bottle. That'd be our cost. And then selling them for $50. Imagine the markup. And that's what some of these other companies are doing, mass producing these things because it's easy to get from China, but they're not getting the real thing. They're not getting actual product that they are paying for.
And I would say in a perfect world, and you experienced it, you got duped. And I think it's important to realize that not every business is out there with nefarious intentions to sell fake products, because just like how we as consumers are getting duped, a lot of companies are getting duped as well, because we just trust a little bit too much and then we end up in a bad situation. And I would say I will give everyone the benefit of the doubt once. But if we have told you very clearly that you made a mistake and that mistake can actually quite easily be fixed, and you don't do anything about it and you sweep it under the rug, then you know full right what you're doing. And then I don't think you have that excuse to really fall back on, because you've already gone through it. You should know better.
I can tell you, this is multi-millions of dollars that we're talking. This is a multi-million, tens of $1,000,000 business, just what we're talking about alone. And Gorilla Mine, for certain, has sold more than me, especially with their product. I saw there was a sale, buy two, get two free. I'm like, how are they doing this? Well, it's pretty easy when you're not selling the real stuff.
So the plant is currently endangered. It's very hard to source. Our limitation is actually in how much we could get. So we're concerned that, by us making all this Ajuga turkistanica, we might actually endanger the crop even further. I don't believe if all these companies actually had real Ajuga that the plant would exist today. It would be gone. So what we're doing, next year, we plan an expedition to look at the reserves of Ajuga turkistanica in the mountains of Uzbekistan and see how much is left. And we're also going to do research on growing it in the rural areas, which it grows in the Surkhandria and Boysan districts. That's like where it grows. And we're going to try and get local like local villagers to actually grow this stuff as part of their crop yields. So like to improve their economy, firstly, and to also um, reduce the risk of the plant going extinct. So we're working on projects now to increase the supply while also improving the economical situation in those regions in the world.
This is
So, yeah.
really exciting. This is really
Yeah.
That's
fascinating.
incredible.
Can you tell a little bit about the current growing process, or do you know a little bit about the culture of the
It's
traditional growth process?
Yeah, so from what I know, it's not grown at all. It's wildly collected. Every time they tried to grow it, it didn't make the sufficient amount of bioactive compounds. They're very low in terkesterone, ectosterone. So we are working with our partner to find out how to grow it and have it produce these compounds so then we can provide it to the locals of those areas to grow it in their own land. And it's in the preliminary stage, but I feel like we'll make good progress by next year and we'll actually be able to have our first batch that's released by purely agricultural methods and not harvesting from the wild.
Nice.
Wow.
So the growth time is pretty rapid then.
Yeah, every year in August they harvest it. So it's a collection of once a year,
Okay,
or around June, I should say.
interesting.
And do you know what, like, does Ajuga turkistanica have like other better known relatives just in terms of the plant itself?
Yeah, so in Uzbekistan, they have a lot of unique plants that grow there. One we included in Turk Max. It doesn't have ectosteroids, but it's Rhodiola heterodonta. It's not an ectosteroid containing plant. But in the areas that Turk grows, there are some other interesting plants like Ephedra ciliata. It has a lot of ephedrine in it, which is a very potent psychostimulant. And it seems that all of these are plant defense chemicals. And because these plants have to grow in very harsh conditions, they have to make these weird compounds. And maybe that's why the idea of growing Turk in China just wouldn't work at all because it's not exposed to these stressors that would encourage the plant to make these defense chemicals. And
Okay.
also, the fungus in the soil can affect the composition of the plant compounds and like the humidity. All kinds of different factors will affect the yield that you have.
I was just going to mention that the terroir probably plays a role here. The soil composition, the altitude. We see that, for example, with maca. Maca really only produces high amounts of macamides when you grow it at a high altitude because it
Hmm.
needs those extreme temperature swings. And if it doesn't get those extreme temperature swings, especially during the drying stage when they harvest it, they actually just put it outside. And at night it freezes and all of the cells get ripped apart. And then during the day it gets warm and that's when the water evaporates and then the cycle continues. And through that you get the creation of bioactives. And maybe that's also something that's going on with the Ajuga turkistanica, where it's being exposed to maybe a lot of heat during the summer and then really, really cold periods during the winter and different fluctuations if it's being done at a high altitude and high amounts of rain and stress like that definitely can play a role.
So if we talk just really simply about no pain, no gain, it's going to apply to human beings and it applies to plants. Like the plants need
100%.
stress, the plants need
Mhm.
challenge, the plants need an environment which kind of pushes it to the limit, and the strong plants survive and they create the bioactives that benefit us.
If I just want to like cover a quick base of, we were talking about the Gorilla Mind product, and their label claim is not total terkesterone, it's total ectosteroids. And I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're covering our bases and saying that we don't have standards to test for every ectosteroid. So they are below label claim. It
Sure.
is possible that total ectosteroids technically meets label claims, but there's not really a logical way that they can be at 18% of their label claim and then the rest of the super minor compounds adds up to the full label claim. But I just want to point that out just to like cover our bases.
So you're saying there's a chance.
There is a chance, but very unlikely.
Yeah. Have you tested their Cyanotus before? Their EcDPlex?
EcDPlex. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay. Because like the preliminary analysis to decide whether, like if you know you have something that has ecdysterone, to decide whether the label claim is true or not, sometimes you could just look at the color, from my experience. Like if they're claiming 60 or 70% and above, it needs to be a little like on the whiter side. Or if they're claiming 10% and you have a very crude brown color, it's probably below 10%. Like it depends on how dark it is. It's hard to describe. But obviously it's not like, it's not scientifically rigorous to do so. But like if you look at the powder and it seems like it's very crude brown, you could probably assume it's like a crude extract.
That's actually one of the first steps we take when we get like raw material in, is we look at it. And if it doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like, a lot of times we can be like, all right, like something's wrong.
Yeah.
Evelyn, I don't know if you're gonna roast me for this, but I don't have a mass spectrometer, but I've gotten so good at testing ecdysteroids that I could literally taste a sample and tell you what percent
That's
ecdysterone it
impressive.
has.
That's so badass.
It's like being a wine connoisseur.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You just know what the wine is from the sip of it.
This is exactly it. And just as Emil was saying, the
4%.
terroir, this is like a wine term. So, you know, we go to a lot of wine tastings. We love wine. And we always talk about how, like, you know, you really taste the river, or you taste the ocean, or you taste the sand, you taste the limestone. You know, some of our favorite wine from France, we just call it rock juice because it literally tastes like licking a wet rock. And you know, I don't know, if you're not a wine person, like maybe this sounds like total like wacko, but the environment where something is growing in has a huge influence on its flavor. And this is because of weather and, you know, factors like literally outside of the plant, but also the minerals that the plant will take up. That mineral content affects the feeling of the wine. It affects the way that it, you know, glides over your tongue. It affects the way that it spreads through your mouth. And like the same thing applies to every single plant, every single extract. Like the reason why we experience these things physically, these sensations, it's all because of the compounds that the plant contains. So I would be curious, Marwan, if at some point you could actually taste, I don't know, like can you eat a Jupiter Castanica raw?
Oh
Or
no, I can't. For Jupiter Castanica, I'm not able to quantify any of its actives by tasting. This is mainly for Cyanotus because they have weird acetone-like compounds that have a very chemically taste. Like it's just But for Jupiter Castanica, what was the question? Sorry.
yeah, the question is, can you eat it raw?
Oh well, its first use was actually a tea. Like they make it into a tea. Hundreds of years ago, it was used by people in Central Asia, specifically horseback riders prior to their expeditions, where it would enhance their resiliency to the heat and cold stress of going on the mountains. And there's actually a note of it in Avicenna's book of plant medicines, where like they've used it so long ago, but they never called it Jupiter Castanica. It was called something else. But it does have a very extensive history of use and noted medicinal properties that I guess we're just bringing it back into the Western market. So it's not like we found something new. This has always been something people have used throughout time. Did try a bunch of other new novel ecdysteroid containing plants like Raponticum. It has very low amounts of ecdysterone, like 0.6%, but it was an insane experience. Like some people said, when they took it with Turk, it felt like they were taking an illegal compound.
Okay, should we go back and actually talk about that?
Yeah, let's
Is that stuff I scoop in my mouth from the bag?
That stuff that you have
What's
is
that one?
probably
Is that Sarponticum?
Raponticum. But
Raponticum.
when you had it in the capsule form, because the stuff you're scooping in the bag is a very crude non-extract that you should be making it into a tea, or else you're probably pooping out most of it. So the stuff
I
they
take
had
a
in the
lot of it.
capsules.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
But yeah,
I've done so many experiments from Marwan. He comes over to my house every week. Try this, and there's like 5 different bottles of different pills, and I'm like, okay, I look like a Coke dealer. There's this little powder. What was that one called? The one where the max dose is like 150 milligrams. That little white powder bag.
Salidrosol. I was telling
Yeah.
Emil,
Yeah.
these guys are taking 100 milligrams of Salidrosol and tripping.
That's
I
a
take
high
it
dose.
150 and adding that into the
Oh,
hardcore pre-workout and having like great bike races.
Yeah.
I can imagine, yeah.
Sick.
That's
Yeah.
like because we also sell a product that has a pure salidroside in it, but it's a 10 milligram dose. So I can't imagine taking 15 doses of that product.
I gave 100 milligrams to Brody Shreds and Luke, these 2 famous influencers at my house. I'm like, we're gonna go take a workout. I gave them turkesterone and the salidroside, 100 milligrams. They went and had a great workout, full body.
Nice. That's awesome.
I've
That's
had
awesome.
I through hiked the Pacific Crest Trail this year, and some of the best days on trail are when you take a little bit too much of something that just kind of triggers your brain to like forget what it's doing. Like your muscles just don't feel the same way. It's pretty crazy what it can do, what your body can do when it's not aware of what it's doing in the same way.
Yeah. I think that's
awesome.
probably how higher doses of caffeine work so well in the gym too. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's important for me, like if we're still on the topic of turkesterone, I really want to extend my gratitude to our partners in Uzbekistan for making this happen. As it sounds like, we're doing all the work. In truth, they're doing most of the work, collecting, producing it. It's so much goes into it, and without them, this would not be possible. And we're proud to call them our partners.
And these guys have been doing it for decades. It's crazy how much research that they've gone into it. It's a shame that North America isn't aware of this, but they were just like, they're happy that we finally had somebody that like us that believed in them.
That's great. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's always good to really connect with the people who have been connected with these plants for a really long time, because it might be going back centuries, even if their great grandparents already used it and it's just been passed along in traditional medicine systems. And now here we are. You want to get the knowledge from those people, which is, to be honest, also one of the reasons why we source most of our mushrooms from China, because China has a very long history of growing medicinal mushrooms. And if we look at the ganaderic acid content of reishi that's being grown in China, it is astronomically higher than anything that's been achieved in the Western world.
That's
So I think
awesome.
it's really easy for people to also shit on China and say there's only bad products coming out of there.
Yeah.
No, it's the companies in the US who aren't finding the good suppliers in China. Because if you actually go and find the suppliers in China that have been growing reishi for maybe hundreds of years already, they really know how to do it. And they're creating bioactive content that is unimaginable for us. And
Mm.
this is also knowledge that isn't necessarily written in books. It's knowledge that's just been passed along in little villages from person to person. And I think it's really important to tap into that. And I do really like that you thanked your partners too. It's something that honestly we probably don't do a good enough job of, because we're selling hundreds of thousands of kilos of botanicals. And at the end of the day, that has to be grown by someone. It has to be grown by a farmer.
Yeah.
It has to be
People think it
picked by
falls from the
someone.
sky. They don't see what goes into it.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to do. If anyone's ever been to a farm, you would realize just the amount of work that goes into growing a crop of lettuce, and that's an easy plant to grow. Now imagine growing a Juga turkistanica that takes an entire year to grow, or with
Or
some,
something that you can't even really cultivate, that you just have to, that you have to trust nature, that you have to trust the environment and go harvest it and collect it, but you have no control over how much is there. You're not helping it, you're not giving it, any kind of fertilizer or anything like that. It's just, it's what nature is providing.
yes. Yeah. And then, of course, you run into issues when a lot of people want what nature is providing, then nature runs out. And that's a very scary thing too, because with something like Ajuga turkestanica, which hasn't really been studied enough in a cultivation standpoint, if the wild species die out, it's just game over. Then Ajuga turkestanica is gone. And that's a really scary reality to look at. And we see the same thing with Cistanche, for example. Cistanche is also a threatened species. Luckily, a lot of Chinese farms have actually figured out how to cultivate it now. So they first put the trees there, and then they purposefully infect the trees with the Cistanche, and then they can grow together. But it's a lot of work goes into figuring out how to basically control nature in a way where you can make it work for you.
Mm.
And that's hard and takes a lot of hard work. But it takes a lot of hard work from everyone all over the world, from the people growing it, the people extracting it, the people even just packaging it up and shipping it halfway across the world, and then the companies who are making it a product that people can take and can be assured that it is what they want to actually take. And yeah, it's interesting talking to other people in the industry too. We aren't alone in this. You guys are doing it too. A lot of us are doing it. A lot of hard work goes into making supplements that affect a lot of people's lives very positively. So I would, just like you are going on an expedition to Uzbekistan soon, I would love to go visit a lot of our partners in China and learn who they are and maybe learn some of their techniques. I think it would be really interesting to get a much more in-depth look at what they're actually doing and how they're able to pull off these amazing feats sometimes, because sometimes you're also dealing with a plant that has maybe 0.01% of a bioactive, and they're able to make an extract that has like 90% of that bioactive. How do you do
Mm.
that? I don't
Mm.
understand. You would just have to extract metric tons worth of material to then end up with a kilo of extract.
Mm.
Oh,
I think it's so
It's
cool that
insane.
via science testing practices, these incredibly expensive and complicated scientific instruments, we can confirm human intelligence and the fact that a lot of these combinations of botanicals from traditional Chinese medicine and from Ayurveda, that they are really effective, that they work, that they are still effective, that we can create these combinations and we can verify their effectiveness and we can test and we can find the reason why they actually work. And it's just incredible that humans have been doing this for thousands of years. And before the instruments existed and before we had computers, they were experimenting with these things and they figured out what worked. And, it's cool that finally we can actually confirm this intelligence and we can confirm
Mm.
this reality with science, but it's also amazing that it's actually always been there because it was just
Yeah.
stuff that was growing.
and the hilarious
Yeah.
thing is probably even in like the Middle Ages, people were scamming each other with fake products. So that
Yeah.
hasn't changed much either.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
literally were selling snake oil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then the Turk thing is very analogous to the snake oil controversy. It was actually a valid supplement. Snake oil is very high in omega-3s, but only the ones from like I think China. But then when you get a different type of snake and get their fats, they're not high in omega-3s and they don't have the same benefits. So it's like the source matters.
Absolutely.
For sure. Okay, now I do want to ask you a question because you guys all go to the gym and you lift weights, and I want to know for all of the bodybuilders and the gym folks out there, what's your current favorite exercise? Like what are you really like super into? Like when you do it in the gym and you're finished with it, you're like, yes.
By a long shot, for me, it's the bike. That includes the warm up. I do a warm up for an hour before I do a total body exercise. And if I'm not at the gym, it's the bike at my house. So the bike is the exercise. And people might think, yeah, but that's cardio. Tell me it doesn't build up your quads riding up a hill. It is intense. So by far the bike.
Great.
As I'm Coach Greg's apprentice, I will also say it has to be the bike. Pretty much just do what he does, and it works. So I
That's
really enjoy
funny
it.
because I've transitioned from weightlifting to like triathlon kind of endurance athlete. So, and I currently am like super into mountain biking. So it's like not even a gym workout anymore for me. It's also a bike.
Awesome.
I would say for me too, it's honestly biking because
Wow.
I grew up biking everywhere. Like
It's
we don't
it's
drive cars in the Netherlands. We're biking
it's not a
everywhere.
surprise though, because endorphins get released primarily when you're doing the cardiovascular activities.
Yeah.
When you're lifting weights, like it doesn't have the same psychological effect.
Well, I would say weightlifting is more of like a long term. I mean, biking and endurance too, you see progress over time, but weightlifting, it takes years and years and years to see the like long term benefits and kind of body composition changes. And then for your composition to stay, it takes a long time to like just build that up. Whereas like athletics, it's every time you go on a ride, you get that endorphin push and you feel like you accomplished something.
Absolutely. I
100%.
would say maybe for me though, it's not biking because biking is like a mode of transport for me too. So I just have to do it and bike against the wind. I would say maybe my favorite exercise these days is the squat because it's just so humbling having that much weight on your back and
Yeah.
then just like you have to go back up, otherwise you're in trouble. To me, that's really exciting.
I always
Squats are also
find
kind of
it's
like that, but
isn't it what you're good at? Like I
yeah.
was a bench press record holder, so the bench press was my favorite. And then when I was going for the Guinness record in deadlifting was my favorite. If I was really good at squatting, it would have been the squat.
Yeah.
This is super cool. I like this. I like this, Greg. You're inspiring me because I really can't say that I've ever worked on weightlifting. I don't know anything about technique, but when I find the thing that I feel like I'm good at, and when I get some feedback from Emil, because you're gonna definitely be my guide in the gym, I'm gonna focus on that because I think you make a good point. Like when you get that positive feedback from something, you want to do it more. You build your confidence, you learn about it, you just become an expert in that thing, and that provides so much motivation. And I guess for yoga, like I feel that about yoga because to me balance is so important. Like just feeling like I can stand straight, feeling like I can walk fast, slow, feeling like I can keep myself just calm and centered, like literally and also, metaphorically. And I think this is why I love yoga so much because so much of it is focused on balance and like that amount of mindfulness that you have to have in order to stay in the static position and not be going like a million miles an hour in your brain. Like to still be breathing, to still be aware of your entire body. And I guess, I can't really say that I've ever felt like I was good at yoga, but the feeling that I have after I do it is like nothing else. So this is why I just come back to it year after year.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
weightlifting is certainly painful. It's not. People say yoga's painful, but we'll see which one's worse.
Yeah,
They're all
I'll let you
hard.
know.
All of them are hard. I've done it all.
Mhm.
When you first start a new sport, the beauty is there's newbie gains and everything, same as weights, cardio, yoga. The first day I go to yoga, I look like an absolute fool. Everyone's turning to the right and I'm going left. I don't know where to face. I'm making noises. I'm like sweating. I'm like, this stuff is hard. Anyone do an actual yoga class? It's brutal. But the same thing happened when I was going to be a certified aerobics instructor. I didn't know how to do all these moves. But you learn, you practice, you get better. It's the fun. It's the challenge of improving yourself.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Did you end up getting that aerobics instructor certification?
Absolutely. And I used it for years. I was 11 years as I was a physical education instructor. And because I got certified aerobics, I would teach aerobics classes to the students. I taught aerobics classes to students. I taught dance classes to the students. I did it all.
Oh, whoa, what kind of dance?
Every kind of dance. Well, I'd go in there and do ballet. Now, mind you, I didn't look good. I wasn't skilled. But when you're teaching somebody that knows nothing, all you need to do is know a little bit more than them, and you could do it.
That's super cool. Did you ever do aerobics videos? Like, can I go back and find some like super groovy aerobics videos of
I
you?
wonder if anyone's ever recorded me. I feel like there must have been, but I don't know where it would be located. I have so many, I have like a book of like 35 VHS tapes from the past. From videos of me teaching kids various things. It very well could be there. There's video of me teaching power cheerleading. I was a power cheerleading instructor. I taught that at a high school for a couple of years as well. I did that in
Whoa.
university.
With people tumbling and stuff as well?
Throwing people in the air with the basket tosses. I was a base. And yeah, we did it all.
Oh my gosh. Were you also, you're also then, can you do that too? Like, are you a
Absolutely. I could do
competitor?
backflips and stuff. I did them on stage as a bodybuilder. I coached it in school. I taught gymnastics. I've done a lot. People aren't aware. They think I just pick things up and put them down. I'm some dumb snake oil salesman. But meanwhile, I've done so many different things.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, I kind of got that feeling when I watched the Vice Sports little mini documentary. Um, because when you were preparing to do your routine, uh, you said like I've been looking forward to this for my whole life. Like you were so happy and you were so excited and it was so genuine. And I was like, "Oh, wow. Like this is something different. Like this is something, this is real. Like you put your whole self into it and you don't get to that place of confidence and excitement before something like this without years of experience, like years of learning how to deal with your nerves and deal with your ego and deal with your expectations of yourself. Like you have to go through a lot of stuff in order to be in that moment before stepping on stage and just be purely excited.
I have goosebumps remembering that moment as you're describing it. I had such good memories. I just love sports so much. Like since I was a kid, I wanted to be a phys ed teacher so I could share my same passion to the younger generation and get them to see health and physical education the way that I did, because that's what made me want to go to school. I had a hard time focusing in class with the ADHD and all these different things. But because of physical education, that's what saved me. And so I was able to do that for 11 years. And now I don't teach kids, but I feel like I teach teenagers and adults how to get in shape, to be physically active, to do their cardio, to eat healthy, and just live a healthy life.
Which in this day and age is
Yeah.
extremely important. We're all getting a little bit lazier,
Yeah.
a little bit bigger. It's time to get
Yeah.
moving. And we had a really good podcast with Joshua. And have you guys heard of the Mr. Happy Stack?
Yeah.
So
I forget the ingredients, but they're very simple. Very simple ingredients.
yeah,
Like it's not like, a lot of people swear by it. They're like, oh my God, like I feel so much better on it.
yeah, and we ended up getting connected with the maker of the Mr. Happy Stack. That's kind of how I got into nootropics as well. I was reading those
Mm.
longevity threads about the Mr. Happy Stack, and I always thought it would be a dream to make an all-in-one Mr. Happy Stack. And I got that
Mm.
opportunity recently, and we made the Omega Tau, which is our Mr. Happy Stack. But then beyond that, we were able to have a podcast with Joshua recently, and he's also really big into fitness. And what he was saying is that every cell in your body is expecting exercise. It's expecting to be active. It's completely geared towards always being in motion, always being metabolically active. So, the most important thing we can do for ourselves is to just constantly be in motion, be fit, be in connection with your own body, and that's going to have benefits for your mind as well. And that's a really big thing that Joshua hits on is that your
Mm.
body needs to be healthy for your mind to be healthy. And I think that's also where supplements slot in. Like maybe if you're
Yeah.
not walking as much because your knee hurts, you can take something that has an
Yeah.
anti-inflammatory action and that allows you to walk.
Absolutely. And I
And
so much agree with that sentiment. Like I know people say, you don't need supplements. Absolutely, no one needs them. But the thing is, um, when you do a risk to benefit analysis, like what are the risks of taking it? What are the benefits? Even if 2 or 5% benefit can mean the world to someone when it comes to pain reduction.
mm,
And when it comes to clinical medicine, like a lot of times things are needlessly prescribed. People go fill their prescriptions and never take the pills because they're aware of the side effects and they just live with their pain. And when it comes to the supplements that we sell, I feel like we've made a huge difference in convincing people not to take performance enhancing drugs because they have other options that are probably not or nearly as good, but it's good enough to feel that extra boost that they are looking for.
yeah,
And
that's an aspect of the business that we're not involved in so much, but that's
mm,
something, yeah, it's important, especially for young guys, because I remember in Calgary in the gym in the locker room, that's also when I first got into contact with steroid use, because the guy changing next to me was just injecting his dose of steroids. And I was like, man, what is that? Oh yeah, Dianabol. It's great stuff. It makes me super big. And this guy's like 19 years old at this point.
Mhm.
That's probably not the kind of stuff you should be doing at that age, or
Yeah.
maybe any age, really.
Yeah, it's an epidemic for sure, especially amongst my peers.
Yeah.
They be using insulin because it's more accessible,
Ooh.
and
What
like
does
SARMs.
that do?
Oh, well, I mean, your body makes insulin to help shuttle glucose, and it also opens up anabolic pathways, increase protein synthesis. Cool benefit, but the risks:
It's
permanent
huge.
brain damage, death, um, and if no one rescues you in time and gives you some sugar, you'll either be dead or you'll have permanent deficits, like be pretty much a vegetable, not
Whoa.
able to communicate. Like insulin, like what diabetics people would take.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, as soon as
Yeah.
you started describing it, I was like, okay, yeah, I know that diabetic people take insulin, but when non-diabetic people take insulin, yeah,
Uh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
Commonly abused
interesting.
Oh,
amongst
that's what you meant.
bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
And it was actually popular in the nootropic scene for a while too, because if you put insulin in
Intranasal.
a nasal spray, yeah,
What does
Yeah.
it do?
I don't know what it should have
They,
a cognition enhancing effect, but it
yeah.
seems pretty dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay, I want to ask you a question then, Emil, about two recent products from Nootropics Depot. One of them is called Caloriburn,
Mhm.
and this one is like a fat burning stack supplement.
Mhm.
Does this then work on insulin as well? Like, are you aware of its effect on insulin levels or?
Yeah, I think it has some effects on glucose processing and insulin. A lot of different things have effects on sensitizing your insulin, like berberine has
Yeah.
an insulin sensitizing effect.
Yeah.
So there definitely are a lot of
Yeah.
supplements that have an interaction with it.
I feel like they only work best in models of obesity where there's already like
Yeah.
lipotoxicity and inflammation going on. So anything that has a slight anti-inflammatory benefit, you'll see improvements in markers of glucose and insulin. But Caloriburn, I think, has like six like Paradol and
Dixperidol, yeah.
um, other like capsaicinoids that
Mhm.
like cause some kind of uncoupling effect, which in theory increases fat metabolism. When you activate fat metabolism, you reduce glucose metabolism. It's just, yeah, it's hard to
Yeah, a lot of
quantify.
these thermogenics, what they're doing is they're converting white adipose tissue, which is much less metabolically active, to brown adipose tissue, which is much more metabolically active. And it's doing it through UCP1, so the uncoupling protein, and that then increases heat generation. And there's actually, what was that weight loss drug? That was DNP,
DNP, yeah,
dinitrophenol. So
yeah,
that is a really strong uncoupling agent to the point where people were just cooking themselves from the inside if they took too much because too
mm,
much thermogenesis was happening. Very sad.
yeah,
Do you think this is
yeah,
slightly what this movie, you remember the 90s movie with the really cool music and clothing and it's really scary. It's about the people who become drug addicts. Um,
Oh, Requiem for a Dream.
Requiem for a Dream. Do you think this is sort of what they made the mother
No,
like
no, no.
addicted
She
to, or is
was
that something
taking
totally different?
amphetamines.
Oh, she was just taking
Yeah,
amphetamines. Okay.
which that's a whole other topic, but I think in a lot of these pre-workouts, they also have unlisted amphetamines because I've definitely taken one
yeah,
where I'm like, that does not feel like what's on the label.
yeah.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. It's been proven many times. And also the inclusion of SARMs in pre-workouts is another thing,
Yeah.
And what does that
which
stand
plays
for? SARMs?
selective
Selective.
androgen receptor. Oh, sorry. Yeah, basically it's like what people want testosterone to be, something that doesn't affect your hypothalamus, but it activates the androgen receptor. But so far, there hasn't been a single one of these synthetic androgens that have been made that doesn't shut down your natural production. So we call them SARMs, but really we haven't reached a level of selectivity where any of them are actual SARMs.
Hmm.
I remember that for LGD 4033, right? That's one of them. I remember seeing a Reddit post pop up at one point where someone was like, "Oh, it definitely shuts you down," and they had some really shocking results, and that's when things
Yeah,
really kicked off for us.
yeah,
I like this. I like the fact that we covered kind of the whole ground from Turkesterone and talking about Ajuga turkestanica and talking about Turk Builder and Turk Max and a little bit of how we actually got here on this podcast. From the initial reveal that the Turkesterone product that Greg had been selling a few years back didn't contain what you had believed it claimed. And then the fact that you guys really did your due diligence, you listened, and you made a product which does contain its claims, which does live up to its name, and which I think is really a redemption moment for this product, but it also just shows your commitment to authenticity and to really helping people improve themselves and their health. I think that's really like the message that I hope everyone gets from this whole podcast is that like we're really here to push the boundaries of what's possible and to improve our own health and to share that with everybody who's watching, with everybody who's interested. And it's been fascinating to hear too from you, Marwan, just about your knowledge and your background and your appreciation of the people who are growing and really the people who are deeply connected to Ajuga turkestanica and these botanicals that we get to benefit from. It's so cool to hear you guys just talk about all of this stuff because, like, we have four great minds in the same place that might not have ever been able to come together if it weren't for a product that didn't contain what we thought it did. But it's cool because now we get to move forward and we know that we're getting products that are tested for their identity. We're getting products that are going to be effective. And we collectively are pushing the supplement industry forward. We collectively are informing people about what's in their products. And we're also informing them that they need to be critical of the products that they take because there are labs and companies out there that don't provide what they claim to provide. And it's really a shame. It's terrible that people get misled by this, but thankfully there are people like you guys, like Nootropics Depot and labs as well that really do stand behind their work and have the support of other labs of the scientific community, of the supplement community and the fitness community, and companies that we can really trust. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for just sharing all of this with us. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, I was
Well,
happy to be here. Great to hear all this news. And honestly, I just feel vindicated just after so many years of telling people we have what we have and then just constantly told it's snake oil and just to say, no, it's not.
yep.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
guess this is also an open invitation to anyone who's watching, who's also been involved with the Turkesterone thing. We want to help. We all need to help each other. We cannot be in this industry on our own little islands. We need to collaborate with each other. And we need to provide good products to the community because if we don't, it gives all of us a bad name and it's all going to get taken away from us at a certain point. So we need to get our shit together. We've got some things in the works to force people to get their shit together. So if you're still one of those people who's showing up on our list, not meeting your label claims, you've got a world of pain coming for you. So I hope you clean up your act like HTLT did. And now you get to enjoy great products and to be part of the larger conversation. And I think one thing that I thought was really interesting about having a conversation with you. I believe it was Marwan and I who first connected on Reddit, maybe even like butting heads a little bit. And then when we started talking, we're like, wait, no, we have the same mission. We should talk together in a more positive way. We want to create a little bit more positivity in this industry, less like competition is great, but it has to be real competition. So if we're competing with people who are able to sell products at unrealistic prices because they don't contain what they should be containing, that puts a huge stressor on everyone in the industry, I think. And I think it won't be very long until everyone's following the rules a little bit more closely.
I agree. Great work, everyone. This is it's a pleasure to finally be in this moment. If you asked me a year ago whether I thought we would be speaking to each other in this setting, I would probably not have believed it.
No,
It's
me neither,
amazing.
to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
This, I was saying to Erica before we joined the call, like this is a pretty surreal moment, actually. Just one, having a conversation with someone else in the industry, and two, having a conversation with uh, a personality in this industry who everyone knows, and a company that everyone knows as well. So it's been a great opportunity to talk with you guys too, and I'm glad that you're so serious about what you're doing, and that we can be colleagues in that now, and we can share how difficult it is with each other, and then also celebrate the victories that we get through that hard work.
And before we
Absolutely.
go, thank you, Ellie, for walking us through the science. Thank you for walking us through those diagrams and the plates, and just really making it super clear what the data actually is, and how we can read it, and how we can interpret it, and then how we can trust it as well.
Thank you so much, Ellie. All your
It's-
work is
it's-
greatly appreciated, and your presentation was top of the line. It looked amazing.
Thanks. It's a bit of a group effort to kind of pull it together in the way that made the most sense and is the most accurate representation of what the data actually shows.
Yeah, I guess we should also thank our lab, because they've been working around the
Yes.
clock to make sure that, one, we can order all of these products, because we really do just order these products off the websites, oftentimes under aliases, so people don't know what we're up to, and then we test those products. And it takes quite a lot of effort to test those products. It's not you just throw a capsule into a machine and press a button and tells you what it is. It can be hours of sample preparation, doing the math on everything, organizing the graphics, even the tables. A lot of work went into it, but it's important work. And I think without having public data like this, we also don't know what's actually going on in the supplement market. And I think just seeing it laid out like this, it's kind of shocking that that's what's going on, because we're honestly not cherry picking products that we know are going to fail. In fact, we oftentimes try and cherry pick products that will pass, because that makes us look better. Because if we constantly show people results that are failing, people also think there's something wrong with us, because maybe we have some sort of nefarious plan to discount everyone in the industry. But then having positive results like you guys show up validates it all a little bit more. It shows that there is real stuff on the market. People are really doing their best, and there just are a lot of bad actors.
Yeah, I don't doubt that you guys have the best intentions. And when I look at other lab companies like consumer labs, I can 100% see that you have a very unique business and people that are wholly committed to disseminating only the truth.
Yeah.
There's no agenda that is clear.
Absolutely.
I think this is the perfect place to stop. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this podcast with your friends. Please ask us questions. Please find us all on Reddit, on Instagram. Greg, you can please shout out your YouTube channel and your Instagram as well, so people can go find you and subscribe.
Oh, of course, we'll be showing this everywhere. Of course.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next month for another podcast of In Search of Insight. And until next time, bye bye.
We're out.
See ya.
Right.